22nd. This is the Superintendent's Workshop, and we are meeting in the TEC, the Joe N. Idolette Jr. Teacher Education Center. And at this point, I'd like to turn it over to Dr. Moore.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and Happy New Year to all of our board members. I don't know how long you say Happy New Year, but we are very excited to be back. This is our third week we've been back, but we have been very, very, very busy, so excited to bring an update to our board this afternoon regarding where we sit academically and how we have our pedal to the metal in terms of ensuring that we're going to be able to maintain this as a school district. We do have three relatively standard items coming before you today. We will begin with Ms. Krista Foley, who will present the much anticipated 24-25 instructional calendar. Ms. Krista Foley.
Good afternoon. Through the chair, what you're looking at is the committee-approved 24-25 instructional calendar. I can go through an overview, and then obviously if you have any questions, I'm here to answer those. So we have a start date of August 12th, 2 optional days for teachers, the 1st and 2nd. We did move our professional learning day, which we call Thrive, to earlier in the week when the teachers return, so there can be more reflection and possible follow-up at the school on that last professional learning day at the school site. So that will be August 6th. September is just Labor Day. We have our open houses at each level in September. October, conference nights with the 25th off, teachers off for the conferences. Moving into November, we have our first semester professional learning day on November 1st. And then obviously Thanksgiving, Veterans Day we have off. December, our 2 modified days per contract on the 19th and 20th with the beginning of winter break on the 23rd. 2 full weeks off for winter break moving into January. The 6th, which is the Monday, would be the optional day for teachers, an opportunity for professional learning or just to get ready. And then students or staff will come back on the 7th for professional learning and a teacher work day, students starting on the 8th. And the end of the month on the 31st is the 2nd semester professional learning day on the 31st, moving into February. Valentine's Day, it happens to be Valentine's Day, would be the Friday off after conference nights. Of course, 1 conference night at each level with the 17th off for President's Day, similar to this year. And then a week off in March for spring break, moving into April the 18th, Easter's on the 20th. And then in May, Memorial Day obviously off. We have graduation on the 16th and 17th, which is normal, Friday and Saturday. And then at the end of the year per contract, 3 modified instructional days with the last day of students on the 30th. And then 1 optional day, because there are 3 total for teachers. They work 2 of 3, June 2nd.
And just for the reference board, all these meetings, through the chair, all these meetings were that the committee met was properly noticed, advertised. Thank Dr. Erickson and Ms. Krista Foley for leading this work and bringing forward to you a calendar that is cohesive. Everyone is celebrating and will continue to, well, basically it's a replica of this year's calendar with minor changes. Thank you.
All right, board members, any questions?
I have a question.
Ms. Rosario?
Just thought about this now, actually. I've had this conversation in the past, and I think last year was the first time that we saw, I might be wrong, but we saw a second page that actually indicated what the holidays were. I don't see that here. So for example, November 11th, it just says students, no school, but it doesn't say why. So can we have that second
Yes.
page that actually indicates exactly what that holiday is?
Yeah.
And,
Yeah.
go ahead.
No, through the chair, yes, we can do that.
Okay, and then will we be able to have that, because this is coming to us tonight, correct?
Through the chair, that wouldn't modify what you're approving. You're approving the calendar. That information is simply based on the calendar. So as our community engages with this calendar, it's just an additional layer of information if they want to know why a specific day is off beyond what is already listed on the calendar. So it wouldn't modify the approval of the item.
Okay, and then what is the difference, or why do we have a green and a yellow? So Veterans Day, for example, says no school, but it's not green, it wouldn't indicate student holiday. or teacher holiday. So why wouldn't those items in yellow that are holidays be indicated as a green as a holiday?
So I believe per contract, there are a certain number of days that are holidays per the teacher contract, but I can follow up and check which one's considered a holiday and which one is, you're just off. I'm not, I will look into it and check.
Okay, yeah. That's odd. I'm going to reserve some other comments that I have for that one. Yeah, so because otherwise, why not just have it all just be, student holiday or a holiday day instead of just no school? Okay. I think those were my initial thoughts here.
Okay, Dr. Jones?
Well, the only thing I heard about the calendar for parents was that Christmas was too long. I was just telling you.
I heard people say they loved it, so.
I know, but I see here now with the 2 half-days and then the week and so forth, they come back on the 2nd, where obviously we came back a little later. I understand that, but some, when teachers have the option to come in or don't. Beth, could you go into that a little bit more, their days that they choose?
So starting last year with the contract, we put in the optional days.
Yes.
So there are 3 optional days. Each teacher must work 2 of the 3. And those are, a lot of times new teachers want to use them, come in at the beginning, but take the one off in January because they want to front load, make sure they have extra time to get their classroom ready, or any professional learning to prep for the beginning of the year. It just depends. It's a nice option for teachers to be able to have a choice.
Thank you.
I have a question, couple. So hurricane makeup days, were those?
Through the chair, we don't identify hurricane makeup days. We have enough count days built into the specific schedule. So if there is a need to make up hurricane days, we'd have to go back and renegotiate those specific days. The half days are the first stab at making up days. So if we've already agreed, if we have to have a closure of schools and we're required to make up days, we would extend those half days, hoping to maintain that. So that's the first days that we'd make up.
Not that long ago, my first year, Mr. Rosario's first year on the board, we had that exact issue. They weren't on the calendar, and then we, lo and behold, had to make up days. And so, yes, it was negotiated with the union. The problem was we had this big hullabaloo because people had, scheduled vacations, and they already paid for flights, and they were upset that it wasn't on the calendar that way.
Well, actually, if I can add to that, Madam Chair, it was actually, they wanted to take the days from Thanksgiving.
Yes.
Through the chair, so that was pre-me and a completely ineffective way of doing that work. The days that we have identified are already school days, so we're already convening and we're already working. Teachers are already working the full day. It's just extending if we have to. And
Okay.
my commitment is we're not going to make up days unless we absolutely have to. It is an inconvenience for the entire community to, shift or modify a calendar if you don't have to.
I agree. If you do have to, if it does come down to that, consider doing it in the spring. That was a real hassle to do it over Thanksgiving week.
Just all knock on wood.
Okay,
But we have plenty of hours built in, so we don't anticipate having to lose
Gotcha.
any time.
and thank you for adding things like graduation to the calendar, because that's, one thing, I've already been getting calls for about a month now on when's the calendar coming out. And it was because people want to know when graduation is, people want to know when school is off. A lot of different businesses work around our schedule. So the next question I have is, St. Lucie and Martin have now gone to releasing their schedule in the fall. Could we possibly do that?
Through the chair, yes.
Okay.
And we'll,
So we can look at maybe releasing it in
Yep.
October for the following year?
Yep.
That would help out parents a lot,
100%.
because I know that they schedule things, and so do community businesses around our schedule.
100%.
Okay, thank you. And then Veterans Day, how come we have that off this year?
So a meeting with the Veterans Council, in each calendar is specifically different. We've had the opportunity to take the day off. And as we reflected on this specific year, we don't celebrate Veterans Day just on Veterans Day. We celebrate it over the course of the entire week. So it is important for us, in partnership with our Veterans Council, to make sure that we connect our students to school activities. So that's the way it worked out this year. Once again, those are meetings that took place. Everyone is in agreement, and we will continue, just not make it a one-day occurrence in our county.
Okay, and you did make that fix in here about the dates that were off? Okay, so that's the final one that we see now. All right, great, thank you. Anybody else have a question?
I do. Just, it's not, maybe it's a question, I don't know how you want to take it, but I always have an issue with the end of the school year, every year. Always have a concern about all of the modified school days. This one in particular happens right after Memorial Day. So we have a full day on Tuesday and then 3 modified days right after. And I'm always concerned because you're not going to have a lot of, students present. Is there a way to think about this later on? And we have this conversation every year too, maybe ending on the 23rd, having those modified days before the holiday instead of after the holiday, or something to that effect, because it just seems like, I don't want to say we're going to waste the time, because we're not wasting the time. We know how that works, where you have 3 modified days back to back, and then the last day of school is on Friday.
And through the chair, the calendar will end depending on when the calendar starts. And we want to start as early as we possibly can in order to maximize the amount of time of instruction that we have. In looking at the modified days, it was a great deal of conversation. And the reality is we want to maximize every single instructional moment that we have. And given that it is the end of the year and the volume of work that needs to be done, it just was the conversation to maximize that time students are there through end-of-year exams and assessments versus dragging out over the course of an entire day, while at the same time honoring our teachers to have the time that they need to effectively grade those essays and those exams and close out the school year.
Yeah.
So it is a balance, and it was a hard sell for me, but at the end of the day, in just response to listening to our teachers and our administrators, this calendar seemed to work very effectively last year in that kind of closeout, but we'll continue to look.
Okay.
All right,
All right, our next 2 items are going to be presented by the birthday boy, Mr. Bruce Green. Our final 2 items will be presented by the birthday boy. So, Mr. Green, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Dr. Moore.
You're on your birthday. So.
There you go. Through the chair. The first item is typically a routine item. I don't know if it's ever been workshopped before that I can remember. However, I came in the middle of this. The audit had been conducted, and it's an audit of our internal school accounts. I just want to make sure everyone understands this is not our general and capital budget that we work on every year and we talk about all summer. These are internal accounts at the schools when schools collect money for athletic events and book fairs and particular items, field trips. Someone at the school has to account for that. And at our secondary schools, we have bookkeepers. And at our elementary schools, we actually have the administrative assistant to the principal serve as the bookkeeper as well. So this is an annual requirement by the state and by the board, and we're governed by the Financial and Reporting Cost Accounting. We call it the Red Book. This document, Chapter 8, governs internal accounts and how we need to account for those things: cash deposited, receipts, due dates. We then, in turn, maintain an internal manual. This is our School District of Indian River County manual for governing our internal account procedures. So as we went through that, and you have the findings, we've kind of briefed them in your board briefings, and they're on the agenda. The auditors are looking for a couple things. They're looking for deficiencies, material weaknesses, substantial weaknesses. So these are findings, if you will, that might, and some things that might even need to be reported based on governmental accounting standards. And then they're looking for procedures and internal controls that could tighten up how you might prevent something like fraud from happening. So they'll also include recommendations. along with and that doesn't, so a material weakness would be something that without addressing it and without knowing it, there is a likelihood fraud will commit because there is no internal control around that. Where a recommendation might say, you have some internal controls, but here are some things that could beef that up and help with that. So in this evening at the awards portion and presentations, we'll be recognizing 4 of the schools that have 0 findings, and actually, although we won't be, that's Citrus Elementary, Indian River Academy, Liberty Magnet, and Treasure Coast Elementary. All of those are elementary schools where those are the administrative assistant to the principal, who also serves as the bookkeeper. Although we won't be mentioning them at the meeting tonight, I would like to give honorable mention to the schools that only had 1 finding. And when I say 1 finding, some look in the book and see only number 1, and think it's 1 finding, but that number 1 could have multiple checks that weren't dated properly or received. This is actually 1 particular finding, 1 check, 1 receipt, 1 misstep in the process. So those honorable mentions are IR Prep, Beechin Elementary, Felsmere Elementary, Treasure Coast Technical College. So I just wanted to give those a shout out as well. However, reviewing the internal school account audit, I will cite a couple things from the auditor. First, the results of the test disclosed no instances of non-compliance or other matters that are required to be reported under governmental auditing standards. So that's good. Second, during the audit, they did not identify any deficiencies in internal controls that would be considered to be a material weakness or a significant weakness. So that's good. So what we're dealing with are recommendations and findings in those internal controls. So we went through there, myself and my team, and we categorized those into things like timely purchase orders. 15 of those at various schools were timely purchase orders. So for example, you're going to go on a field trip in May. In August, you want to get that in. You might not have collected all your funds. You get that purchase. Well, you don't want to put the purchase order in because that could create your account to be deficient. You haven't collected the funds to do that. So we are now modifying our internal manual control book to say, get a blanket purchase order in for a penny. Get the purchase order in August, so you have a purchase order. Start collecting the funds, and then readjust and do a change order to the purchase order once you know the exact amount. But you've followed the procedure, and you have a purchase order, which is approval to register for a bus or a charter bus for the trip. Checks not deposited within 5 business days. And in the Florida Red Book, in Chapter 8, it actually references 5 working days. So we are modifying our manual from 5 business days to 5 working days. Although we want to hold schools accountable and we want internal controls, our days off, you just reviewed the calendar, a working day might not align with business days. We might have days off. A Thanksgiving might have a Friday included, or some staff might be off on a Wednesday. You might have an athletic event that evening before. So we'll be modifying ours to be working days, which aligns to the Red Book from the state. And one of the recommendations that has been in every year is to remove the bookkeepers as being signers, check signers, when they sign a check. So currently, we do have a compensating control in place. We require 2 signatures on the check. So a bookkeeper alone could not write a check to pay an invoice. We have 2 check signatures. At secondary school, we have staff, principals, assistant principals, and other staff members who are assigned, including the CFO and the superintendent. We're authorized check signers in case of an emergency. At elementary is where you run into the difficulty where the bookkeeper is the administrative assistant to the principal, and there is only the principal and the assistant principal. And if one of those are off-site, so we're looking at ways, and we've looked at several other manuals. We're looking at ways of possibly having someone at the district office. We've talked, actually, Ms. Chris Foley, I've talked to her. She's the principal supervisor. modifying that she would be the third. She's familiar with what the schools are doing, where they're going on field trips, in case of an emergency, when the principal or assistant principal would not be on site, she could be the third administrative signer on the check. So overall, no substantial weaknesses or material deficiencies. However, I just wanted the board to be aware that we are thoroughly reviewing the book and making some changes. The last staff accountant that we hired in finance was actually a former bookkeeper, and that was strategic because they've been on the campus and been a bookkeeper, so there's a lot of insight. We just had the bookkeepers in last week, and I led that meeting with them to go over some of those procedures, and what I found is we really don't have a district trainer in finance that goes out, so we're going to be leveraging that staff accountant, who was a former bookkeeper, to go on site to the schools, especially when we get a new person in that role. They're the administrative assistant to the school. We can't always say pull them out and bring them in for 5 days of training on everything else that has to happen, so we go to them and provide that training.
Okay, questions? Mr. Rosario?
So what happens with donations? So I know that I saw a line here that said that donations would be included under a separate trust account. But usually donations come in, they're typically not general, sometimes they are, but if they're not general and they're specific, for example, if there's a donation for, I don't know, redoing the gym floor, that would be under sports or athletics. Why wouldn't that donation go directly into the athletic account instead of into the trust account? Because then from the trust account, it would eventually have to be transferred into the athletic account anyway.
So the idea there is to ensure that funds committed for a specific event stay with that specific event. It's commingling of accounts is what they call it, and they don't want that to happen. So generally, you'll see those donation letters, and it might be for a STEM program, FPL STEM program or something, and robotics kits. So that assures the accounting, and there's a fund strip for it, that those funds don't get spent up with the football team going to
Right.
some event. So it's just it's another internal control to separate those funds to ensure they go to what the donor wanted it to go to.
So then what would happen? Let's say it goes into a separate trust account. It's supposed to be for the gym or for athletics. Eventually, it would have to be, I guess, withdrawn from one account and placed into another account in order for it to be actually spent.
And you
Right.
can use, so the trust account has an accounting strip with it and can be
Okay.
used for purchasing.
Got it.
Anyone else? Doc?
Just a couple comments. First of all, congratulations to the schools who had none or one. Former middle school principal, high school principal. The high school principal, it's like you're in a bank. The internal accounts are massive. I love the idea, because purchase orders, that's ongoing. I love the idea of posting it ahead of time. I think Mr. Green said with 1 penny, and then making sure, because sometimes those happen so quickly and you don't get it in time. As far as the middle and high school, you are correct. You have other people who can help sign. But in elementary school, that bookkeeper is doing many other responsibilities than just bookkeeping. It could be, and again, that's with the school, it could be assistant to the principal, looking at curriculum, whatever it could be, just an asset to somebody else. So what I don't want happening there, and if we have a district person, is just making sure that we get it in on time, because that means a district person has to go over there and get it signed. So somehow if we get some kind of procedure for that and get them to look ahead as much as possible. But when you look at elementary, if you talk to every principal, they've got different duties. But you have several elementary schools, just having 0 or 1, that's pretty darn good. But thank you for that purchase order, because that's a really, really good idea. A lot of us would trip up on that one.
My turn. Unless you have a question. Okay, you have a question? All right. I've been through this. I kind of gave you a heads up. I was going to ask you some questions, and you did your homework today, and you were prepared, so that was good. You answered a couple questions, which I appreciate. I have been in the position of having a booster club issue, and that was a huge concern was booster clubs and the fact that sometimes they were doing their own thing. I know booster clubs have now come under the auspices of the school, so they get that internal count check. They get, hopefully, that's still happening, and they get that bookkeeper looking at the books and kind of dealing with the money, which is good, because that was an issue, big time. One thing I dealt with when I was a principal in St. Lucie was every month that my supervisor came to my school and sat with me after we walked classrooms, she would do a spot check. He knows. You had her too? Mrs. Yost would come in and would do a spot check of our books. And she would sit with our bookkeeper and she would go through it every month. And we had to answer to whatever issue she found so that we weren't in this position at the end of the year. I think that was a great thing to do. The other thing was I sat with our CFO quarterly. They came to our school. I know that's a lot, and we had a lot of schools down there. But our CFO would come, especially if you were a new principal. They would come to your school quarterly and sit with you and go through your books as well. So I think it was a really good way of double checking, triple checking that everything is on the up and up. Receipts for cash, we see that all the time on here, and 2 people taking money at a door. A lot of times when I go to events, I see one person sitting at the door. And that right there violates that. So we have to maybe insist that we have 2 people at a door when we're taking ticket money or whatever it is. I know that's a pain, but they have boosters for a reason. You know, it can be a parent, but my suggestion would be that they be trained by you or somebody on your staff on exactly what they have to do.
And through the chair, you'll see some schools do have procedures in place that they train each one of those and then put them through a financial training.
Awesome.
But we got to make sure it's consistent across all
Yeah,
the
I think you
schools.
just need it for all your fine arts, for your booster clubs, all of that. You really need to get a handle on it because it was a huge issue in the past. The bookkeepers shall absolutely not be signers. That's a big no-no anywhere, in any business. And so we are a business, we are the largest employer, we need to be very careful with that. So I think, why not have 3 signers? Why not have your principal, your assistant principal, maybe a coach at the school? So, is that possible?
So yes, so that, through the chair, that is what we're researching. So the principal can sign as many as signers. They have to have at least 2 per state. Many of them have 3 or more. And as I said, the CFO and the superintendent, we're signers on all the accounts as well. I just signed for one where the principal was out and the assistant principal was out, so I reviewed the documentation and signed it. But that is our goal, is to designate staff at the schools to eliminate the bookkeeper from being in the process, so they're only managing the books, not signing as a second person on the check.
Yeah.
But
And-
we do have 2 signer requirements as a compensated control on the check.
Good. You know, it's nice to see so many without any findings. It's great. And another shout out to Indian River Academy, because not only is this their 2nd consecutive year, but they've had other years where there's no findings. So good job to Liz. I know she does the books down there. Yeah, she's watching, I'm sure. All right. That's all I just wanted to double check, because those findings at the bottom, if you go back several years, at least since I've been on the board, we see the same things over and over again. So. Let's, like the door's ajar, let's see if we can work on that. Thank you.
The next item we have discussed in board briefings, and that is our on-site wellness center. As you know, back in 2014, I believe you started in February and signed a contract in September of 2014 with Care Here for an on-site health and wellness center. And the idea there is to be proactive so that employees go and they find out, they get a full screening, an annual screening. They find out areas that they need to work on, and they're able to prevent something bigger happening down the road. So it's been about 10 years, right at 10 years since that's really been evaluated. In 2020, Care Here was bought out by Premise Health. They acquired them. And that was a 3-year contract, which is expiring this summer. Back over this summer, Mr. Fagan, who was also leading the HITEF, which is the Health Insurance Advisory Task Force, which has representation from all of the bargaining units, from the retired educators, administrators, teachers. They review our health insurance fund to make sure, and for those of you that remember back when we had some struggling times with that and we had to correct that, we were in a deficit and really had to do a turnaround. That fund is doing very well right now, and it's very well managed. HITEF keeps a tight eye on that. Well, one of the things they found is it has been 10 years, and we have had some service issues, and the market has changed. There have been a lot of acquisitions of companies, smaller companies by larger companies, which give them the ability to be more competitive in pricing and the services that they offer. So back over the summer, Aon, who is our risk management and insurance consultant, and they do that on our behalf as a partner, worked with HITEF to issue an RFP. They issued it on our behalf. It didn't come out of our purchasing department. They went out. They're a $12 billion company global. They went out and looked for market leaders and identified 8 market leaders in this area, one of them being our current provider, Premise Health. Rubrics were established, and that's what this binder is. This is an example of the work of anyone that was on the committee. This is what they reviewed. These are the rubrics. These are the interview questions that happened. So that team has been working. HITEF actually had a subcommittee that had all that representation say, go off and review these vendors, score them, do all of this work, and bring back a recommendation. Do we have the most cost-effective service provider? Are we getting the best bang for our buck? And can we address the service issues and the financial issues in a different way? So on December 13th, that committee presented to HITEF, and they unanimously chose Proactive MD as the vendor of choice of those 8. Our current provider in the very beginning was non-responsive. By statutory, we have a 45-day pay in statute, 45 days to pay, and their standard contract is 30 days. They wouldn't modify it, so the modification they made is if it was between 30 and 45, they would charge us some fee for being over 30, but within 45. So it was non-responsive to the bid. The bid required that you meet the statutory requirement of us having 45 days to pay. So they were non-responsive to the bid. So at this point, HITEF then took that recommendation, had the conversation, and they unanimously voted to bring that recommendation forward to you, the board, to allow the district, through its risk and insurance partner, Aon, to enter into contract negotiations with that vendor to have a contract to be able to open and take over management of our on-site clinic this summer, July 1st. So that's what you have on the agenda tonight is basically HITEF's recommending to you, we've done this work, this is who we think can manage our system the best, the most cost effective, and they're asking for approval for us to begin that into contract negotiations. The estimated, we'll get into the contract, the estimated cost savings is 8.1% or $500,000 over a 3-year contract. Because the market is different, there are different providers and they can consolidate things. And this particular one manages hundreds of on-site clinics, 70 different schools. They're the 3rd largest on-site management company in the U.S.
Hey, board members, any questions? Dr. Pasca?
I think Proactive MD was the one you were just referring to, right?
Yes.
So yeah, I think their contract, one of the stipulations, and I don't know if it's different with the other one we're comparing to, but it's a staffing relocation and incentive fees if applicable and approved. Are we expecting we're going to have to pay to move professionals here?
So, and are you looking at their standard contract?
I'm looking at the document that was provided on board docs.
Okay. Our goal is to leverage staff that we have. So it's not a staffing issue that we have, it's a management issue. We've made a commitment. We were very clear up front to all of the vendors that we wanted someone with expertise in taking over a clinic and absorbing the staff that were there. So that is our goal. As you know, there could be non-competes. Once we enter this contract and tonight, basically, the cone of silence will be over. We'll enter contract negotiations, and that will be our first conversation is,
Okay.
what can you do to keep the staff that keeps our family healthy and our SDRC family love the provider, the individual staff members that we have. So that is going to be their goal, is to negotiate with them and see if we can't keep those.
Okay. And there was one other related question. We can go back to it, though. I'll let other people.
Okay,
inquire.
Ty?
Thank you, Mr. Green. The HITEF committee, I sat in on that before I was a board member and a couple after. That's a really, really good, strong committee. Retired educators, you know, our unions both represented in that area, so glad they're involved. When you look at saying that we go out to proactive, so for example, we can start the negotiations when it said, was the one that did not agree to a 90-day notice to term without cause. So those are the things we can talk about.
Right, and we'll be presenting them with our standard contract as the basis of that contract negotiation.
And one thing I have heard from several employees is that they're very comfortable with the staff we have now, so hopefully that will be a big push, because just like when somebody has a doctor, you like to kind of stay with the consistency and support that they have. So once that cone of silence is off, we can start negotiation, right, birthday boy?
Yes.
Okay.
Through the chair, yes.
Okay.
Thank you.
Ms. Rosario?
Thank you. I think that from what I understand from our one-on-one, Proactive was the only vendor that actually applied, right?
So there were 8. Our current provider, Premise Health, was non-responsive and was not included because they would not comply with our bid requirement of 45 days. So they were eliminated, and the other 7 went through the process.
Okay, all right,
It was our current Premise Health who was not included.
okay.
What's
All
the,
right.
what's the total annual cost for the clinic?
I'm-
Is it what's listed here as like 1.8, like 1,845,000? Or what other costs are incurred?
I believe so, and we do have our Director of Risk Management, Employee Health Benefits, Ms. Mercado, with
Yeah.
us today, if she'd like to come up just to answer some more specific questions. I do know that the cost avoidance of having the on-site health clinic is about almost $3 million a year by having that model
Yeah,
versus going through.
sure, yeah. So I guess this, if we contract with the management company, are we paying anything else in the clinic as far as, we'll say, management of the building, staff salaries? What other things are budgeted for the clinic that's not in the management?
We pay the vendor a per employee, per month fee for the management. All other expenses associated with the clinic are direct expenses that we pay.
What was it last year, I guess?
The budget overall is about 12 million.
12 million for the clinic, and the management fee is like 1.8 million approximately. Okay, right. Now, how many patient visits are there annually?
Tough question. 12,000 to 15,000.
Okay.
That's off of memory, so I'm pretty close, but that's not going to be exact.
So it's a total of about 12 million per year and about 12,000 visits. Okay,
And that's all primary care.
right.
Ms. Rosario, did you have another question?
I think, and of course, I don't have this, it would be probably a good time to bring back to us at another workshop, like a full analysis, just to show us like where we were when we began and where we are now, and I guess some of these numbers, the benefits of having care here, or, this medical facility here. I know that coming as a board member, as a new board member in 2018, I know entering these conversations then, it was still fairly new. So from what I understand post, there was and just, I don't know, Mary D., if you were here at the time. There was a recommendation at some point from HITEF, Dr. Moore, you might have been here, and it was kind of astronomical. Like HITEF was recommending that we increase our health insurance by something in the teens, you know, I mean, it might have been more than that, I don't even know. And I think at the time, if I remember correctly, the board members looked at our numbers, and we realized that we did not have as high of claims. And so they were recommending this increase based on what, I guess, projections, what could be, but wasn't based on the past history. And so we realized that, thank God, the board decided not to accept the high-tech recommendation, and we met somewhere in the middle. And I think at that, I don't even remember what it was. Might have been 5% or something. I don't remember. Dr. Moore, you might remember better than me. So high-tech makes these recommendations, but it's not necessarily, you know, something that the board has to adopt. You know, we can engage in these conversations. So maybe this might be a good time for you to come back and kind of present where we are, like I said, you know, where we were, where we are now, and the benefits of having, of us spending this amount of money. Because, you know, anyone listening to this right now might not have the background, and they might say, oh my gosh, you're spending, you know, $12 million, you know, and it's like, now we have to be accountable for where these 12 million are going, and it's not necessarily coming directly out of our, you know, one bucket of, you know, funding that we have. It's actually, employees are paying into this. So I think that needs to be explained as well. So, Dr. Moore, if you'll accept that.
Through the chair, what we're approving tonight is the opportunity to engage in the development of the contract, so we can bring back the contract itself. I think it's standard practice to do, this is what you did have, this is what you're going to have, this is the benefits of the new contract, these are the associated costs, this is how we're going to fund this specific program.
Okay. I'm looking forward to that. One of the reasons why and of course, you almost can't be for sure 100% on some of these guesstimates, but because we had so few claims over several periods of year after, you know, engaging in these contracts with Care Here, and then we changed to another vendor, you almost want to say, well, we're providing this service, or at least the service is provided. People can go into this clinic, receive their, you know, they have a cold, they walk out with their medicine, they don't have to go pay out of pocket, they don't have to go to a pharmacy, they don't have any of that. They go in, it's like a one-stop shop, and for so many people, I think that has helped to bring down some of our numbers, you know, some of our claims and some of our other issues. It then increases, you know, attendance with staff. There's a lot of other benefits that come along with it. So seeing the cost analysis and the benefit, you know, how it works and why it's important, I think would help. I'm going to mention also a conversation publicly that I have had multiple times on why we don't engage in cross-county partnership. St. Lucie County has the same model. I don't know if Brevard has it, but St. Lucie County has a similar model where they have their county employees are in, you know, and have this similar service. I don't want to say the exact same, but it's very similar. They have their own facilities where their employees can go, their employees and their family, the entire family can go. And I know because when I was married, you know, and you know, my ex-husband was a sheriff deputy, and of course, when we were sick, we would travel to St. Lucie. But because we lived here, it was just an inconvenience. Like, how wonderful would it be? And I know we have some employees that live in St. Lucie and travel here, vice versa. But if we were to engage in some kind of, if in these conversations with local county employees, how much better would it be to have more people providing into this pool, which would end up in less cost for our employees? I don't know what that would look like. I know we've had this conversation, and Mr. Green, Bruce, you said that you would engage in these conversations to look into the benefits of doing something similar. What are your thoughts on that?
I've reached out to St. Lucie in a little bit, and their county is the constitutional agent that runs that. So it would require some interagency working, and then you get into the mod rates of each one of those groups. I don't want to say it the way I traditionally say it, but some of those groups are healthier and have different clientele, and we have many teachers are female and have kids and have other costs, so mod rates are different between those particular agencies. So that's another thing you have to work out, who benefits from it and how to manage it. But it would definitely have to be a well-coordinated, like we're putting out this RFP for the school district, that would have to go out as some interagency initiative.
Yeah, we had, several years ago, we had, when Laura Zark was the chair, a intergovernmental health panel, I suppose. I forget exactly what it was called, but it was intergovernmental health something or other. And all of the agencies came together here in this room and talked about what they do, you know, regarding their health benefits for their organization. County commissioners were here, the sheriff department, all local law enforcement were here. It was a good conversation. It just didn't end anywhere. It, you know, didn't have finality. I just think that maybe something like that again at some point, you know, if we were to have these conversations further, rather than, you know, worry about violation of sunshine, maybe we can have a public meeting out in the open and say, hey, these are all the benefits, this is the analysis, you know, what do you all think about engaging in that with us? That might be an idea moving forward.
Okay, I remember that meeting, and I remember that we all on the board were really interested in maybe having the county work with us and the cities work with us and stuff. And then we got into the conversation about why we couldn't. We have a lot of bus drivers, they don't. Bus drivers take on a different responsibility. And that was part of the reason why they weren't all excited about getting with us. The other one was people that carry guns. That's a different type of insurance issue than, you know, sheriff's department. So that was another issue that came up. Also, we are self-funded, and I think they have insurance funding, so it's a little different. I know when you mentioned St. Lucie does it, not the school district. You're talking about the county that has their own. Yeah, school district does not. And they were interested in that, and they asked me about it. And I said, yeah, we have a great little clinic here that the teachers can use, employees can use. I said, that would be great, except for they're not self-insured. So that's the reason why it's a benefit to be self-insured. Sometimes it's not, but I think that was a benefit to it. I have a concern about, you know, if you are a teacher or an employee and you're hearing about this, the first thing you think of is, what are the changes going to be for me? You know, what's my copay going to be? What can I get from the clinic or not get from the clinic? Are the hours going to change? What are the big changes? So I think that needs to be well communicated, of course. And, you know, I never used it before until this last year. I went to our insurance. I was amazed at how good they are. I really was. And it's a great service that we have. So let's continue to make sure that it helps us save money, but it also helps the employees.
So that leads me to my last comment, which was about location. And of course, now we're not going to make any changes right now, but I think maybe to piggyback off of a comment that Dr. Posca mentioned about the cost of changing location, we only have one location. So anybody, you know, as far south Vero and as far north Vero who needs to visit this location, it's just one location. And it's good that it's pretty centrally located, but you kind of wonder, can we get more out of the use of this facility if we had two separate locations or, you know, some other kind of, this is why I think it's so important for us to try to even partner with St. Lucie at some point, Because even our South County employees, they don't have to travel all the way inland for us, inland, you know, where our location is. They can just go to Fort Pierce location, you know, into St. Lucie and utilize their facility. It's a convenience. You know, you're sick, you don't want to travel when you're sick and you have a headache or fever or whatever. But, so coming back to this location question, if for some reason this location that we currently have needs to change, do we have to, I guess, you know, pay for that change of location? Maybe that might have been the question that Dr. Posca mentioned, I'm not sure. But do we have to, or is that something that is covered underneath the agreement? I'm not sure.
May I?
Yes.
2 points there for you. One, in regards to central location, we've done a heat map by zip codes, and it's still the best. However, one of the things that we've considered in the past, speaking on behalf of HITEF for you, is that if we have to expand the clinic, if we reach utilization, then we would look at another location, north or south, and make that determination to add additional staff, perhaps at a different location. To answer the second part of your question, we pay for all expenses. We provide facility use, we pay everything, labor, all those expenses come through to us. So if you do have another facility, yes, that is additional physical plant expenses.
Okay, thank you, appreciate it.
Of course.
And that exhausts my agenda, and I turn it back to you, Madam Chair, for the legislative.
Sure. I was just in Tallahassee. I know Mr. Barefoot's not feeling well, so he needs to go. I was just in Tallahassee. Otherwise, I would have gotten this to you earlier, but I just got back. And on Thursday and Friday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, I was there going through the different trainings that FSB offered, but I also met with our lobbyist firm, FSBA. I went to their headquarters, and I met with our legislative officers and a couple other offices I stopped in. So I want to kind of give you an update as to where we are right now with legislation. That's hard to read. Okay, so on that second box that's up there on that screen, basically, dereg is the big discussion right now, deregulation. And so in other words, getting it on the same playing field with charter schools, public schools, voucher money, so that a parent has a choice of where they want their child to go, but also know that they're going to have a similar incentives with their choice. So they're not going to be putting their child somewhere and then not get the services they need or something like that. So SB 7000, 7002, and 7004 have already been sent to the House. So they passed on the floor. They sent them over to the House. The House has HB 7025 and 7039, and those are the two to observe right now, because those are the two bills that are discussing what came over from the Senate and what are we going to keep, what are we going to change. So on the second page, it goes through all the proposals on these couple of pages and the recommendations for DOE, and it goes through all the House proposals. The last one on, it's page 3 on the paper, slide 9. On that one, it says what the differences are between the bills. And if you look at what's similar and what's different, there's not much different other than some turnarounds, some things that are specifically that the House wants versus the Senate. So just watch those two House bills that are going through and see what they do with the Senate bills that came over. Senate moved very quickly on those because dereg is a big, big importance to Senate President Pasadomo, and so she made sure that got through really quickly. So the House Speaker is Mr. Renner, and Representative Renner, and he is, his priority this year is social media changes. So it's kind of interesting, and he put out his bill. You know the bill, if it's HB1, you know it's important because of the number. It is his budget, it is his bill, And I'm going to flip to that part a second. So I'm going to skip over the governor's budget for a second. I'll do budget last. And this part of the bill, it's interesting to watch. There's the Senate President Pasadomo and Representative Renner below that. There was a new representative that was sworn in while I was there, just got voted in from Orlando, and it was a Democrat in that House that flipped from a Republican to a Democrat. So the numbers have changed a little bit. This is, I know Governor DeSantis has now announced that he's going to be concentrating on our state more. So it'll be interesting to see what happens this year with his term and what he's going to be doing. But his remarks on opening day are quite interesting. He said basically, stay the course. Number one priority is career and technical education. And he's putting some money into that. And then, of course, civics is a big thing for him, along with career and technical. And then increasing teacher pay, which is right along with our priorities. So it was great. I took our priority sheet in, and I said, look, this aligns with the governor's statements. This aligns with Senate President's statements. This aligns with the House Representative Renner's statements. So basically, Renner is saying that he wants to create restrictions regarding social media, and that's HB1. So HB1's interesting because I don't know how they're going to control it. I don't know how you decide whether or not a child is under 16 because you don't have to show ID under 16. You don't have that ID thing. Or over 16. Some people don't require ID. So it'll be interesting to see what happens with this bill. And just so you know, over the years, in 2022, there were 232 education bills filed. In 2023, there were 243. This year, only 183. So they're backing off a little bit, which is kind of nice. The deadline for filing is already passed, so that's how many were filed this year. However, committee deadline is not coming up until February 22nd. So after the 22nd, all bills will be out there, and we'll know exactly what's happening with education and where it's moving forward. Sine die, which is the last day of legislation, will be March 8th. I don't expect they will go beyond that date because it's an election year. And usually during election year, everybody wants to get home and start knocking on doors. So that should be going through pretty quickly as far as the end of the session goes. They've already got the governor's budget, so let me go back to that. He gave that out. His budget's always due early. There it is. Okay. And so on the governor's budget, you'll notice a couple of things. On page, well, their pages aren't numbered, sorry about that, but on this page right here, it's right across from where it says Florida Education Finance Program. That slide shows the governor's calculation of FEFP. And all of those have gone up a couple of percentage points except for one category. And the one category that went up 22.64% is state-funded discretionary. And usually when you see discretionary, superintendents get all excited because that means that's money I can flex and move. Actually, it's earmarked for vouchers, so don't get excited. Okay. The next one, right here, voluntary pre-K. He is proposing $450 million to be put into voluntary pre-K. So you're going to see pre-K expanded. You're going to see, I love this one, school readiness. There is a new proponent that he's putting out there called HIPPY. And HIPPY stands for the Home Instruction Program for Preschool Youngsters. Basically, it's to send a curriculum to parents that want to prepare their child at home to get ready for kindergarten. And so there's curriculum that's going to be developed for pre-K, for at-home study. Then, of course, school safety is a priority still, and civics. Civics is a huge priority for the governor, and he is putting definite money into specifically civics, which hasn't been the case in the past so much. Then K-12 public education will see $27.8 billion for the BSA. So the base student allocation is going to increase, which is what we've asked for, so that's good. I don't know if it's enough increase, but we'll see. And literacy is a high point that he brought in, and he's talking about micro-credentialing of teachers, putting money towards that, because teachers do have to get those micro-credentials, but whether or not they're getting help with that is the question in the past. Of course, he has money for recruitment and for teacher appreciation, apprenticeship programs, and for military, for retired military veterans to come into teaching. Have we had any yet? Okay, that's what I was wondering. And then workforce initiative, he's got CTE as a priority. So if it's CTE, it's workforce related, there's going to be funding for that. So that's one thing we want to look at with our CTE programs, whether or not we can take advantage of some of those special offers that are going to happen. Now, if you go to the section that says bills, right here, the glitch legislation, it's interesting, you know, when we're up there, usually a bomb is dropped. That's what they call it. They drop a bomb. And what it is it's amendment to a bill that makes everybody go, whoa. And there was one that was dropped on the second day we were up there. And it is on HB 109, which is, it's called, let me go to that one. It is the conversion charter schools. So HB 109. Right here. Basically, what they're saying is that if you have a 1% drop in population of your student population for 2 years in a row, let's say housing market drops, and that happens, for 2 years in a row, 1% of the population, which I think we said it was 154 students, something like that.
Jared, it depends on its total count enrollment or just the public K?
Public K.
Yeah.
Okay. So if that happens, then in the past, the school board can determine vacant pieces of property that we have, vacant rooms. Not anymore. This bill is going to say that the government can determine you have a vacant room and give it to a charter school, or if the charter school doesn't want it, they can turn it into workforce housing. So that was kind of like the little bomb that dropped while we were there. So that'll be an interesting to watch. So watch 109. Going back one, 1473 requires that all school classrooms and other instructional spaces be locked all the time. This one, right here. Now, we lock school spaces, but I know people forget sometimes or whatever. Mr. Teskey, you'll love this. If they go through and see that it's not locked, you can be fined for that, and a teacher can be in trouble. So it's to ensure that teachers understand the necessity of locking classrooms. Okay, so I'm not sure what, that'll be batted around to see what the punishment will be. It will be interesting to watch that one, though. And then social media bill, HB 1. This is Speaker's bill, and he wants to make sure that anyone under the age of 16 does not have a social media account, period. And so all social media will be taken away from anybody that's younger than 16. I'm not sure how they're going to enforce that, but that'll be interesting to watch that too. And, you know, it's got a lot of good things in it as far as, you know, making sure kids aren't exposed to things they shouldn't be exposed to. So that's kind of a good thing. And anything else? I think that was it. Yeah, it was a good session. It was a quick session. Usually I'm up there for a week or so, but we had a dinner on Friday, so I came back for the dinner. But it was an interesting session. It doesn't seem very depressing this year. Last year I was pretty depressed up there. This year it was pretty positive, good meetings, very positive up there on the hill. And I think, you know, people are looking towards, what can we do for other things that we need to consider for the state, like insurance was a big topic. So, any questions about that? No? Yes?
Just a couple comments. Kudos on pre-K, because we can always use help there, and that's the beginning of helping our students. Teacher pay is great, but what we ran into last time with the first-year teachers starting at the compression that we needed to have. And I heard where they say they want them to start at 60-some thousand, which would be great, but that's our top teacher now, so without the extra benefits and performance and degrees. So, and that would be cool if we really could do it through compression.
That's actually what he's referring to.
Okay.
Yeah, compression pay.
All right, and
So,
social
it was
media,
good.
so they're talking about any students younger than 16 could not be on a social media account, even on their own phone.
They cannot own a social media account.
They cannot own.
Now, if a parent has it and allows their child on it, I don't know how they can
Okay.
go around that, but, yeah, a child cannot have their own account, and everything from their old account has to be wiped immediately.
And first of all, thank you for giving this to us, because we see this all, and I've been reading it, but I love your explanations, that helps. Now, you did say something about schools and then putting workforce housing in a school?
Yeah, what they're talking about is, read the amendment to Bill HB 109. It was an amendment that dropped last week. Basically, it was in committee. What happens in committee is a bill will be discussed in a committee, and then a member might want to add an amendment to that bill. And so they'll throw out an amendment, and sometimes they throw out what they call a bomb amendment, which is to get everybody's attention.
Right.
And that was kind of the one of the day. So it did get a lot of people's attention while we're up there.
So we would have people living in schools?
You better read the amendment exactly. It means that the building itself can be taken over and used for workforce housing or a charter school.
So we wouldn't have children in the building? I got to read the amendment.
Read the
Okay.
amendment. I'm sure it'll be discussed, changed, moved, or deleted. You know, it will not probably stay exactly as it is, because that's one member bringing it up
Sure.
in a committee that will definitely be hashed out.
And I know that's, I mean, when I was at the FHSA, when we followed bills closely, that's what would happen. Everything looks good, and then, something's added at the very end. It had nothing to do with the former bill. It doesn't even connect.
It's gravy train.
Thank
the way
you.
it works.
Thank you, Ms. Barrenborg.
Uh-huh. Mrs. Rosario?
Yeah, I see Senator Grawl has a bill, Senate Bill 1788, addressing some of these items. Because one of the things that I thought of when we, as soon as social media was mentioned, it was we're going to need a legal definition of what social media is in order to be able to ensure that we're not allowing it. So examples, Facebook, Twitter, I don't even know what the other social media platforms, which one? Instagram, yeah, see?
X, whatever that is, yeah.
Yeah, all of these, Snapchat, TikTok, that's right. Goes to show you I don't have those, right? But what I've noticed here is that it actually states the account holder means a resident of this state who has or opens an account or creates a profile or other form of identification to use as or access a social media platform. And then reasonable age verification method, because there was a question about, how do you verify the age? It just basically says that means any commercially reasonable method regularly used by government agencies or businesses for the purpose of age and identity verification. And of course, Senator Grawl would have the definition of social media platform. It means an online forum offered by an entity which has the ability to track the activity of an account holder or user if such online forum account holder or user to do. And then there's all of these A, Bs. I have to really take a look through it. I think when we get there, the short of the long of it is, assuming all of this passes, when we get there, if you have a school, Dr. Moore, well, it would be our high schools. If we have, 16-year-olds in high schools, what would you recommend at that point? I mean, cutting off social media platforms, for example, or access to it by identifying the student using focus, or just making sure that, all students do not have that access? Like, what would happen at that point? What would be the projection?
Through the chair, it's very hard to deal in hypotheticals when
Yeah.
the bill hasn't even been
Yeah.
completely passed. Right now, we block all of those things on our devices and our network, so that's not necessarily That's what we have control over, but ultimately, this is a burden on parents, really.
I'm sorry, it's a what? What did you just say, that last part?
On parents, because at the end of the day, they're the ones who would activate the device or give the device.
Yeah,
to
but
the-
schools have to make sure that we are not allowing access.
Right, and that currently is in place in terms of going
Okay.
into our network or our devices, we're good there. But these kids have their own device and are using their data and not necessarily
right.
our Wi-Fi.
Right. So a couple of other things that I noticed, Dr. Moore, you and I were talking earlier today about OpenGate. Well, here we have the proposed 42 million for public school hardening grants. Maybe some of those hardening grants might be, or could be used for adding more open gates to our schools, specifically for our entrances, as we discussed earlier. And then also the other alert system that I have always been in favor of, the panic alert button that we talked about in, in years past. What will be here tomorrow? Yeah, Centegix. Yes, and so we come full circle. But here we have, $6.4 million to continue providing school districts access to panic alert systems. So I'm encouraged because both of those were items on our legislative platform, or at least, the hardening of school, the adding of funding for OpenGate in particular was really the concern that I had. Because they're so expensive. And I'm grateful for our local law enforcement, for our sheriff's office who have partnered with us, and we currently have 3 together with the sheriff's department. So I'm grateful for that, but it certainly isn't enough. I know that we can do better there. The other item that I was going to mention was the social media definition. There was another item that just completely skips me right now, and I'll see if I can come back to it before we dismiss. I'll see if I can find it. Thank you.
Okay, just so you know, when you go to like Florida House of Representatives and you look up HB1, one thing to look at when you're looking at a bill like that is to pull down and look at the related bills on the Senate side, since they have to have a Senate bill to match, and there are several. So she mentioned SB 1788, which is Senator Grall is involved with that bill, but there are several others. So all of those right there in the Senate, there are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 in the Senate plus 2 committee bills. So it's going to be well hashed out. That probably will take a while to go through, and then the Senate will, the House is going to run through it because it's Renner's bill. But the Senate will take their time to say, yay, we agree with this, no, we don't. So it'll be one to watch, but there are several on the Senate side to watch. One is on the protection of minors for social media platform. One is similar. One is how you investigate it. That's the question. People are like, you can make a law like that, but how are you going to enforce it? So the enforcement part is what everybody's wondering. How are they going to enforce this? And, do we enforce that? You see a kid on their phone and they're on Twitter, is it our responsibility to enforce that? Because if so, I hope they're going to give us some money for, whatever it takes to do that. And you mentioned $6 million for the hardening. That's nothing. Because if you're looking at 67 school districts, $6 million just goes fast. So hopefully we'll see some more money put into the school safe side of it, safety. And that's about all I have right now, but watch those specific bills I talked about because they'll be interesting as they go along on the floor. And that's all I have. Anything else?
Yeah, Dr. Moore, our legislative priorities are not in our library. So if you go on board docs to library and you scroll down to legislative priorities, The last legislative priorities that is there is 2022 to 2023 school year.
And I made sure I handed out a bunch of those up there. So I know our representatives have them. And I also brought them by Yesenia Rutledge, gave them a couple of copies to hand out as well. Tried to get them into the hands of the committees. That's important that you get them to the education committees for sure. All right. So with that, I believe with nothing else, I'm going to call this workshop meeting to a close. It is 1:15.